We're here in Philadelphia at the National School Board Association, and I have with me Jordan Cooper, the Senior Staff Attorney. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I know you're going to be talking on a very comprehensive program.
Yes.
And that program deals with medication. And, you know, the whole area of medication is so comprehensive. You got the mental health, you got the role of the nurse, you have all these things.
Yes.
And if you could share 3 or 4 kind of key points to let people know kind of the breadth of this program and where to go to learn more.
Sure. So just a little bit about the guide itself and some information as to why we created this guide.
Right.
As you mentioned, medications in schools, it's a pretty comprehensive subject.
Yeah.
So it's estimated that 3.5 million students take medications in schools. So with that creates a lot of challenges and issues for school districts.
Right.
So we wanted to create a legal guide that could be used as a reference for school leaders to go to when they're facing medication management issues, when they're developing their policies and procedures regarding medications in schools. But we also wanted to create a guide that leaders could use for these evolving social norms in the areas of medical marijuana in schools.
Oh, my goodness.
That's definitely a hot topic right now.
Proactive.
Yes, the laws, especially on the state level, are evolving pretty rapidly.
Yes.
So there's been a lot of movement, especially in the past year, in medical marijuana in schools. And then we also wanted to create a guide that leaders could reference regarding electronic cigarettes. That's definitely a hot topic right now as well.
Goodness.
So these social norms is what we like to call it, the medical marijuana, electronic cigarettes, and then also we highlight opioid addictions in the guide as well.
Boy.
So, and not only do we talk about those issues, we do highlight some liability issues, student privacy rights and responsibilities when it comes to drug involvement, search and seizure issues, First Amendment issues. So the guide is pretty extensive, but we really did think that there was a need for this, and it is available online for free. So it's actually right here.
Wow, look at that.
Yes, so we're very happy and proud of this guide, and it's something that we think school leaders can use to look as a resource when issues may arise in their schools.
Well, no, school boards are so focused on making sure they have the right policies in place, because they can get in a lot of trouble without having the policies in place.
Right.
But then trying to have the staff that's knowledgeable, with the skill sets necessary to implement that kind of wide program is going to be a challenge for them, I would think.
That is true. So I will say, when it comes to developing issues and policies, it is state specific. So some states have laws or regulations that apply to every district in that state. And then other states, in the alternative, actually leave that responsibility to the individual school districts. So we really encourage districts to meet with a COSA attorney, to meet with their school leaders when they are developing these policies, to make sure that they're not only following the law on the federal level, but also within their state and the local level. And that is something that is obviously very important. So it is going to vary state by state as far as the exact policies and procedures that should be in place.
I would think some of the opioid and other drug issues may be within the family itself. And you're really addressing not just the student, but when the parents or the uncle or aunt has to be part of that whole kid.
Right, and that's very true. So, as you mentioned, it doesn't just affect necessarily the children, it's the community at large. And some states are actually implementing policy regarding opioid reversal medication. So if a student is going through an apparent opioid overdose, there are some drugs that rapidly reverse that overdose. So, for example, Maryland and Rhode Island, those are some states that have policies in place in New Jersey that require high schools now to stock these
like
reversal medications. But yeah, I mean, we're encouraging in the guide to not only maybe start looking at policies that have those reversal medications, but also education and training, because it's hard sometimes to pinpoint who is affected by this epidemic. And one thing that I did want to mention about the epidemic, because you're talking about parents and uncles or people that may be affected by it. One thing that I think is interesting that we're starting to see now is a lot of babies are being born from mothers that were using opioids during pregnancy. And these children now that are 5, 6 or so are starting to have developmental problems. They could be eligible for special education services. So now we're starting to see a younger generation that's affected by it. I think we've been so focused on, making sure that people are aware of the addiction and trying to steer teens and kids away from that. But now, as I'm saying, we're seeing younger kids affected. And so it really is spanning across generations.
Well, you had mentioned the legal aspect that has to go with the rest of the program. I would think denial, resistance, maybe shame, changes the behavior of parents when they're trying to say, it's not my child.
Right.
My child doesn't have that problem. I would think that's a really big challenge for a school district, to address those issues and do it in a way when the parents don't want to be supportive.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. I mean, I think deniability is a huge problem, and that's why I think with training, you got to focus the community at large, because while you might not be directly affected by something, as a whole, a community, I mean, it really does touch a lot of different people. I know the Department of Education has a lot of webinars for administrators to use with training and just talking about substance abuse problems. In January was they released a lot of material a couple of months ago regarding how teachers and administrators can kind of start talking about these issues, and with parents as well. So there's definitely a lot of resources out there in addition to our guide that highlight it.
How has the insurance industry been brought into this, the health insurance industry?
Right, so in regards to the pharmaceutical company that created Narcan, which is the nasal spray that does the reversal of an opioid overdose, they have a program right now where they're providing 2 of those nasal sprays to high schools, YMCAs, libraries for free. So I know that some school districts have taken advantage of that program. That's something that would vary state by state, depending upon their rules and regulations as far as stocking that medication. But so I know the pharmaceutical companies are starting to get involved with this issue, and that's something that is available as a resource for schools.
Well, I can see how important that program is, and I really appreciate you sharing parts of it.
Yes.
We're just hit the tip of the iceberg of this program, and the implementation is key. So many of the districts that I know of different sizes, I can see where some of them would be challenged by having to, in addition to what they're already doing and trying to fund with limited staff, to then tackle something that really is, you're not going to get a lot of support when needed.
Yeah, and that is definitely an issue. I mean, funding for public education across the board, as you know. I mean, not just with the opioid epidemic, but with school nurses in general. There's been a huge shortage of school nurses. So right now only 3 states require the medication in high schools, and so I'm curious to see if other states are going to make that a requirement because of funding. I think maybe they're trying to find creative ways to get that funding, but that pharmaceutical program that I was speaking about earlier, that is available, that could help with some funding issues in that regards. But funding is definitely a problem.